Well, hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DeFerio, and I'm your host for the show. And of course, I'm glad to have you here. So go ahead and subscribe to the show and reach out, chris@keystotheshop.com. Let me know where you're listening from, what questions you have, what things you want to hear. I offer it to people that if you want to hear specific things that we probably covered it. So just reach out to me and let me know, hey, I'm really wondering about this subject. I will send you a link to different episodes that will actually cover that subject. I recognize this is one of those things that we need to work on in the show. Like we have so many episodes, let's try to find a way to curate these for you. But you can go to the website, by the way, and search the topic in the search bar on keystotheshop.com. That'll bring up a ton of great content. So try that first or just email me. And that's also where you can reach me, Chris, CHRIS, at keystotheshop.com. If you're looking for a coach or consultant to help you in your coffee shop to elevate and refine your operations, your leadership, your culture, just the systems and workflow and quality of your bar. These are things that we have been focused on helping clients with for the last 8 years of Keys to the Shop consulting. So it would be great to have a conversation with you. There's a link for a discovery call in the show notes. We're onboarding new clients in 2026, and maybe you'll be one of them. So I would love to hear from you. Chris@keystotheshop.com. Now, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Arto Brick, also our friends over at the Barista Series from Pacific. You'll hear more about them later in the episode. But let's get right into it today by introducing our guests. We're talking with Matt and Elise Higgins over at Origin Coffee Bar. They have two stores. They have one in Savannah, Georgia, and another one in Hilton Head Island. And since 2020, they've had this focus on generosity, community, excellent coffee. Elise is originally from Michigan, oversees the social media and food program and guest experience. And Matt Higgins is a New England native, and he leads the roasting, coffee quality, and brand and wholesale part of their business. And so this is they're roasting, they are serving, and they're doing so with a mind for excellence, but especially on generosity and community. So with the word community, especially with Matt and Elise, this is something that is just core to how they started with a cart. They started by being invited to other people's gatherings, like weddings and things, little communities that needed coffee. And then from there, and for those of you who have a cart, I mean, think about it that way. That's pretty cool that you're invited into these little gatherings. That's a very trust-based transaction right there. And from there, that cart quickly became brick and mortar, and that brick and mortar became very successful, excellence at the core, community at heart. And then they grew now with their second location in Hilton Head Island. But all along the way, and especially hear this from Elise today, this unwavering faith in what they were doing is going to work because it's rooted, and this is my interpretation of it, it's just rooted in the love of people and loving people through their love for coffee. And together, Matt and Elise, they both have design, like professional design backgrounds, and they have really created and designed a guest experience and community experience that is just top notch. And so I think that you're going to get a lot from this, especially going through the journey from inception to today, and the insights that Matt and Elise bring us to help us learn what it's like to work with a team to bring quality coffee to a community and create true hospitality moments consistently. This is one of those episodes you definitely are going to want to take notes on. So I am really excited. So let's get right to it. Here now are my guests for Founder Friday here in December 2026. Matt and Elise Higgins of Origin Coffee Bar. Well, Matt and Elise, I am so glad to have you on the show. How's it going?
Great, thank you. It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much, Chris, for having us on.
I've been following your story for quite a long time. I mean, it feels like with social media, we get to have a window into the building of businesses like no other generation of owners and operators and professionals have. And so it's been really cool to see now. It's been 5 years of you all just kind of hitting the ground running with a cafe and roastery and growing that location in Savannah. Now you got 2 locations, upgraded your roasting operation. And all the while, it feels like there's been this enormous amount of community support right from the word go. And it's really exciting to see. And so I want to start the conversation around this idea of who you were. I mean, you are this now still, but who you were before you started in coffee. What was the genesis of this idea? And you must have had a lot of great connections already in this community in order for that kind of support to buoy the business as you started.
Yeah.
I'll let you start. Where were you when we started?
Sure. When we started all this, we were living just outside of DC, but we had known each other and had been married for a little over a year at that point. And we met here in Savannah, Georgia, when we were at college at SCADS. And we loved being here in Savannah, but we went elsewhere for work and kept trying to find a slice of here everywhere else. And when I guess it was 2020 came around just before the pandemic, so like days before the pandemic, we had job offers elsewhere, and we were looking at that, but we just didn't feel right about it. And Elise had this drive to start a coffee brand, and I can let her go into that. But we really were just at a point where we were looking for something different in life, and Savannah kept beckoning us.
Yeah, so I've always been entrepreneur minded. I went to SCAD actually for accessory design, and I focused in business. And then after we graduated, we actually went back to SCAD for an incubator program. And we had a leatherworking business for a few years.
Wow.
And then, so we did that for a little while. It was super fun. And then I kind of got to a place where I wanted to switch things up. I didn't know what to do. Had like 3 months of I couldn't figure out my life. And then I fell into marketing outside of DC when we lived in Virginia. And that was really good for me. It like opened my eyes to the world of like communication and storytelling. And SCAD also gave us a background of like, how do you tell your story while you're also building your brand? And so we flew out to California to look at those job offers. And we were visiting all these coffee shops when we were there. And I was thinking about it. And I'm like, what do I actually want to do with my life? And the funnest job I ever had was being a barista. And my wheels were just turning like slowly on this trip out there. And Matt came back to our hotel one night and I said, I know what we're doing. He's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, we're going to start a coffee shop. He's like, no, we're not. We're like out here looking at jobs. And he was actually the one that had the job offer. But then we went out together and they offered me a job as well. And I was like, I don't know, something doesn't feel right. And I know you feel it too. And we couldn't put our finger on it. And I was like, what if we just scrap all of it and start a coffee shop? I was like, think about it. We can go back to Savannah. We can do it with no overhead if we do like a mobile coffee concept, because we had followed a few people that lived in California that had mobile coffee bars. And I was like, we're still young enough to where if we like fall on our face, we have time to recover. And I was trying to convince him, and he was really upset about it at first. And then by the end of the evening, I think he kind of felt what I was feeling in terms of like, we have so much life ahead of us. And something about these jobs in California didn't feel right. And so I kind of got you to like jump on board by the end of the evening. And so we pursued it. And only 2 months later did we discover that the company that we almost worked for laid off a majority of the staff due to COVID. So if we would have accepted the offers, we would have been laid off almost immediately. And I think that was what we were feeling, but we just couldn't, you could never predict something like that.
Right.
Yeah. So we moved to Savannah and started a little mobile coffee bar. And that's just kind of where we got our footing.
And that was after, I mean, we lived outside DC. We sold everything we had to start the business, because when you're looking at all the expenses of starting even a mobile coffee bar, you're like, oh my gosh, the financial weight of it up front feels like a lot. And so we just sold everything and started this. And with that idea of we're young and dumb enough, we can bounce back. If it doesn't work out, we can do something else. But that's how it started.
So let's just think about how you needed to pivot away from the design world and start into something where you're actually, now you crafted leather goods, and it's not, I guess it's not too different when you're thinking about, but it's a consumable product.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's a little bit different. Did you think your palate was developed enough at that point to know, hey, this is no different than what we do visually with, or the textures of the things that we design and the things we've learned about the senses? We can apply this knowledge to beverages. Was it a 1-for-1, or was it a little bit of a learning curve when you did that?
Yeah, I think the product was so much different, though the process felt very similar because I, at that point in time, had experience in marketing. You were all about branding. So the idea of building a business was very similar in that sense. We wanted to create a brand. We knew what we wanted it to feel like. But in terms of the product, to me, it was such an easier sell because I don't have to try to convince somebody why they want a cup of coffee. Like that is ingrained into our culture. We just need to make sure that we make a really good cup of coffee. So,
And to that point, it's the experience that you get. And so for us, my background is in branding and in performance. And so I know all about how to create the brand, how to create the experience from the jump, and then how to interact with people and make them feel seen. And so merging the artisanal skills that Elise brings to the table and the experience, the crafting experience and brand that I was able to bring to the table, I feel like we were able to really hone in, okay, we have a quality product and a quality experience, and being able to interact with those people from across the bar in a way that you may not be able to do at another cafe. And so I think that's what we were able to bring to the table and bring from our prior experiences into this.
but you're definitely a coffee guy. You like,
Oh, yeah.
at that point in time, I knew about coffee because I worked in it, but I was pretty indifferent to the product. But you were the connoisseur to kind of help us develop what we were actually going to end up serving. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. So did you roast right from the beginning, or did you use a wholesale provider when you were doing the cart work?
Yeah. So when we were mobile, we were using a wholesale provider. We were using another local roaster. And we did that until the point that we started opening up our flagship location. So when we started that process, we started working with some of our friends that had experience in roasting, learning everything we could from them, and then just getting our feet wet and just diving in, honestly. Even still, we're learning. But yeah, we're at the point now where we're growing our roasting operations because we don't only ever thought we'd roast for ourselves, where there's been so much demand from local, regional, and national partners to do wholesale for them. So we're expanding that into the space that's behind our flagship cafe in Savannah. So our team's just been growing alongside that demand as we've been going along.
Got it. So that grassroots growth through the cart, what were some of the lessons that you learned about yourselves and service being out at weddings and events in the wild? It has to, that's the scrappy entrepreneur, genesis. That's the classic story. And it's what you wanted to do. That's what you just said. We're young, we'll make our mistakes. It's low barrier to entry, I guess. But what in reality, when you were lugging the cart around and getting set up, what were the big lessons that you learned where you're just like, man, this is serious business?
I know for me, I think one thing that helped me is I just had this unshakable faith that it would work out. I don't know what it is, but I just had something in me where it truly felt like a possession in the sense that I'm like, I just know in my bones this is going to work. And I think that helped us have so much optimism. Like you can get so far truly if you just believe in yourself. And so we did. So when we started, we never really considered what failure would look like. And we used everything that we had learned through work and school, put it in our back pocket. So when we got started, we did a lot of marketing and a lot of it was free. So I know a lot of people don't like to do like unpaid exposure opportunities, but we did a lot of them. So we did a lot of giveaways where we gifted some people like free coffee service during their wedding. And we just use this as a way to like meet people and get in front of people and get started where we didn't really have a place to start. So that kind of got us our first few events. And then from there, it kind of trickled in. We'd get a lot of inquiries that were more like, asking us to pop up as like a food truck. And then that was a great way to meet people in the community. And I think just getting our face in front of people was very helpful because it was kind of a new concept to the East Coast. There was a lot of mobile coffee bars on the West Coast, but it's almost a service that's hard to explain unless you're there and can experience it, of like you truly get a cafe right where you're at.
Right. We even looked for one when we were getting married in 2018, and the closest one was in Chicago at that time for our region. And so when we had the idea, that was part of the go-to-market strategy. It was like, well, there's nothing else really in the area, so we may as well do it and see if it works. And so it just added to that whole dynamic.
Yeah. And I think learning, like when we got here and we realized that there's a lot of ordinances and a lot of local regulations. You can't just pop up. We thought we'd kind of pop up like a food truck on the side of the road, and realized very quickly that's not something that you do. I remember we were trying to explain the concept to one of Matt's family members, and he was like, so you guys are like a hot dog stand, but with coffee? And we were like, exactly that, kind of.
Yeah.
But then we kind of turned our focus to private events, and it's a great space to be in, and it really worked for us. And so it snowballed of like, we got started, we did a lot of free events, and then it just snowballed into like more events, higher paying events, more like brand partnerships with businesses.
And then the demand grew to the point where people were asking for us to have a location. And so we started off with a kind of pop-up permanently for about a year and a half or so. And then the community demand was there to go to a full flagship, and from there on. So it's been pretty crazy.
That was only maybe a year from the day that you were starting the cart, right?
Yeah. So it was only, I think we had started the business, and maybe 3 months later we had a pop-up location. It was during one of those free events that we did that we were approached by an event venue owner, came to us. It was height of COVID. My venue's empty. You guys have a mobile concept. Do you want to pop up in here? And we can both benefit. And so we went at it from a collaborative perspective, and it worked out really well for that period of time. And then we outgrew the capabilities of that space. The community came behind us. We had a Kickstarter to help raise enough money, or as we thought was going to be enough money, to open a cafe, and then just kept hustling from there. The community support behind that, it took almost 2 years to open up our cafe. But we had that community support behind us. And it was really quick when you look at when we started to how it's been growing to this point.
Yeah, it is really quick. And I think I want to go back to something you said, Elise, on the idea of having unshakable confidence and just this faith that it's going to work out. I believe in yourself. And I think we hear that, and I want to know what that does fit, in the decision-making process. What difference does that make in how you move through opportunities and how you decide on yes and no and maybe, versus if you had more doubt? Why did that make a difference actually?
I think it makes a huge difference because, one, you're not operating out of fear. I think that completely changes the way that you approach a problem. And two, we had a lot of good background from our time at SCAD, and we've learned that like when you hit a challenge, you don't just shut everything down, you pivot. And so for us, we've kind of learned the art of pivoting, of like, okay, if the first thing doesn't work out, that doesn't mean it's a closed door. That means we just change lanes. And so I think learning that and knowing that, I also think there's a bit of we were naive, but it was so good for us because it forced us to take one challenge at a time. Of like, if we laid this business plan out to somebody who's done this before, they'd probably like mark it up with a red pen and say, there's no way this is going to work. But for us, we were like, it's going to work. We just have to figure it out. And we got to take it step by step. And and I think it's just something I grew up believing in myself, and I don't know, I was just very sure, and I really don't have a good reason why. I was just very sure, and I'm not very sure about a lot of things. So when I felt it, I was I can't explain it. It was just something that I knew in my bones that we needed to do, and it worked
Yeah.
out. So yeah.
It seems like a customer would pick up on that. And where they feel there's confidence in the operators, there's the exuberance, the excitement. I love a confident flight attendant. You know what I mean? Like if I'm in a busy space and it's a venue, and it may, if you're doing a wedding or your own cafe, you want the professionals to be very confident in what they're doing, to give you a sense of security about what you're investing into. I wonder if there's, all these opportunities that came up to be able to pivot in those ways. I mean, you
Mhm.
obviously had confidence to say, yeah, we'll do a pop up in this venue. Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
pursue a cafe, where a lot of people might have had a lot of doubt to say, well, let's see if it's the right opportunity. You had the confidence to say yes to it, and not in a reckless way, but in a, this feels like the right thing. And we kind of know now what to look for. So that really makes sense. I wonder what you were looking for when it came to the next step. Were you already thinking, hey, we've got this cart. We actually don't want to just stay a cart. Are we going to be do brick and mortar? What were you looking for long term? And how did you go about seeking it before the opportunity actually presented itself?
When we first started, or at least I felt like Savannah didn't need another coffee shop. There's so many, and there's some good ones. And so we didn't initially intend to start a coffee shop. If anything, we purposely did the mobile bar to keep our overhead low. We don't have to employ anybody. And I think when we did the pop up location, it kind of just stirred up a new passion in us to where we felt like, okay, we could do a coffee shop. Like it's going well. We really like it. And I think we liked getting to have regulars and having those interactions with people. And it was very different from the mobile bar, but I think we just really fell in love with it at that time.
Yeah.
And so then when our lease was coming up with the pop up location, it just kind of naturally happened where we just started looking at locations, seeing if things would work. And even though we were very confident, we said no to a lot. We had a lot of opportunities come to us over the past few years, and we've said no to 95% of it.
Nice.
Um,
Okay.
and I think it goes back to the gut feeling of like, if it doesn't feel quite right, like those jobs in California didn't feel quite right, like I'm more than okay to say no, because I'd rather say no and not get caught up in something that's not meant for us.
Yeah.
So though we were very confident, I think it's because we felt it in our gut. And so for us, if there were opportunities presented that didn't feel right, like we were very quick to just be like, no, it's not for us. And so I think it was just a matter of open doors that did feel right. And when we first found our location that we have our flagship in, we walked through it, and we both kind of felt like this is where we're supposed to be. And it was actually an old antique shop that we used to go on dates on in college. We used to like walk through it all the time when we were.
It was a good free date.
Yeah,
they had the most incredible things in there. I mean, from knight's armor to like a giant plastic lion and dinosaurs to armor. Like it was just one of those, like fun little like quirky areas of town. And we actually didn't put the pieces together that was the same space until we signed the lease. And we're like, wait, this is the same spot.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it's just kind of full circle. And I think it speaks a little bit to in taking those right next steps, although there are a lot of shiny opportunities, a lot of really cool things that can pop up. You want to say yes to the right things that are going to help establish a firm foundation. And, I had a mentor at one point have this illustration of you want to have a wide foundation that you can build something strong on. If you have a small, narrow foundation, when you build up, that building can topple over. So whether you're looking to build an empire or just build a sustainable small business, you want to make sure it's planted and wide starting off. So, because there are a lot of great opportunities that can build your business. But if you're not doing it strategically, it's just going to fall over eventually.
That's true. Yeah. So you said no to a lot of things. Was it really just like, finger to the wind, it doesn't feel right? Or was there a discussion and, well, it's too small, well, it's too expensive, or, oh, it looks shady? What were some of the, what was the conversation like?
Yeah, that's a healthy mix of all the above. There are some opportunities that they were in locations that we had been looking at, and we really loved the idea, whether that was the venue itself was beautiful, fantastic, or it was in a city we wanted to grow into. That, we had family there, and that would be a great excuse to see family more often, or whatever else. But we had to look from a strategic standpoint as well as our gut feeling. And a lot of places there were, 86 reasons yes, but 87 no. And so we just had to trust that and move forward. And some of them looked like it'd be a great next step, but just didn't feel right in our gut. And so those doors, we didn't walk through, and I'm glad we didn't. But we reevaluate those steps every day, truthfully. Even still, as we look forward to the future of what's in store, we even just had a meeting the other day about opportunities that are coming up for 2026, and strategically saying yes and no already to what this year has.
Right. So one of the constraints that people have when they say yes or no to an opportunity is not so much whether or not the business can do it, but it's whether you personally can do it. And have the time, the bandwidth, mental margin, emotional margin to do it. And at this point, I imagine you had a team, but how did you end up assembling a team of people to help you? And how did you navigate the limitations of your team that you assembled? I mean, imagine that was part of what we can and can't do. Like, you have to care for the people and yourself in the process, because a lot of people do say yes, and they technically are not wrong. It is a good opportunity, but for the people, it ends up being such a burden that it just submarines the operations. So I guess it's a two-part question. How do you go about getting good people? And then how do you care for them in the way that you make decisions about the business that impact the people?
I feel like there's a lot of opportunities that have come up where like we can do that, but should we do that? And I think being very wise with the what should we do. And one thing we look at as well is like, how is that going to impact our family? We have a daughter now, we have a boy on the way. And we also look at like, what's our end goal? Thank you. What's our end goal for our business and our family? And then, we have said yes to other opportunities like Hilton Head. But we waited for a time in which we felt like our team was stable. And that took many years to happen, a lot of learning. I think when we first started, that was an area we didn't know much about. We hadn't employed people before. We've only worked on teams. And so I think that was beneficial because we've had the experience of being an employee. We know what it feels like. And so I think we just got started and we learned along the way. And one thing that we're very passionate about now is we 100% base our employment off of personality hire first. If they already come with the attitude, it's easy to train experience, but it's difficult to train attitude. So we always look for people that carry a really good attitude, because for us in our business, we prefer to put hospitality first, and we want to make sure that our customers feel like they're cared for. So I'd much rather train experience over training attitude. So I think we've learned along the way of like, when we sit down and have an interview, for us, it almost feels like going on a date. Like, I just want to get to know you. I don't really care about, I do care about where you've worked, but that's not my primary reason for getting to know you. Yeah. And so I think we've kind of learned how to build a really solid team, and a team that meshes well, and then also put structure in place. So we have different levels of baristas, and then we have our leads, and then we have our managers, and then we have us. And I think kind of creating that foundation has also made it a lot stronger. And so it's a lot easier for us to say yes to an opportunity when we don't feel like, okay, if we say yes to this, are we going to drain the team that we have? Are we going to drain ourselves?
Yeah.
So I think it was learned over the years, but
yeah, absolutely. And to the point about, the personality hire topic, it's, you look at experience, you look at if people can do the job that they're applying for, sure. But at the end of the day, you want to make sure that the organism of the organization as a whole is healthy. Because if the whole is healthy, the individual is able to thrive in that environment.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. And so we want to make sure that, and we've had hires in the past that maybe weren't a good fit within the culture of our company, and that's okay, but they were a great fit somewhere else, and that's awesome for them. But we want to make sure that for the whole team and where we're going together, everyone's able to thrive in a healthy way.
Yeah. Some people would hear hire based on personality, and I've heard that a lot, myself as well. And I think when I hear you describe it, it may be different than when I hear it. When I hear it in my head, it comes up as, maybe it's like packaging versus content, right?
Mhm.
So there's fancy packaging where it's just like that makes you buy it, and then there's the content which is different than what you thought you were getting. And so the sparkle that somebody has in an interview, their style and the aesthetic, it sounds like what you're talking about is more like, who are you as a person? What's your character like, in alignment with what Origin Coffee Bar is trying to do and offer to customers? Is that more like what you're saying?
100%. 100%. People can interview really well. But it's how they show up on day 26 that matters. How they, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what happens when they're faced with stress? When there's a line out the door and around the corner, how do they respond?
Mm-hmm.
And like Elise said, it's kind of like a date, trying to get to know them through the interview process. It truly is. I mean, there have been some interviewees that on paper we shouldn't have hired them, but they were the right person for the job and still are the right person for the job. And we will
Yeah.
stand by that. And they've been incredible, incredible. And I think that just speaks to, like you said, Chris, it's the content of the person rather than just the outward appearance of that person. So that's what we're
Yeah.
really looking for.
And I think when it comes to growth, I mean, we always try to honor the team that we have. So
Yeah.
whenever it comes to opportunities, we always look at, okay, who are the people in Origin that want to stick around, and can we build them up to be, manager or, this next idea? We would much rather like help people grow within Origin than just try to find new members.
Yeah.
Obviously, when our location is an hour plus away, sometimes that's not always, we're not always able to do that. But within our business, we definitely try to create areas for growth for people too, and just honor, their commitments to us, because there's people that have been there. We still have people on our staff that have been with us since day one. And we always want to find ways to make them feel like, their hard work is seen, and that we'll respect that as well.
Hey everyone, it's Chris. And like I said in the beginning, I want to talk to you about our friends at Arto Brick, also at the Barista Series. So Arto Brick, go to Instagram at Arto Brick. If you have a coffee shop and you're looking for tiles, stonework, hard surfaces that are unique, beautiful, and you need a partner to help you create something that's just, it's lived in your dreams, but you want it to live in stone. You want it to live in your cafe. You want people to see this and make this cafe really unique. They love this. This is what they do. So if you've got a new building project, or you want to refurbish, you're expanding, that kind of stuff, this is perfect to go reach out to Armin on Instagram at Arto Brick. Start a conversation and let them help you make that dream come true. So also, we are brought to you today by the Barista Series from Pacific, the plant-based beverage that is designed for baristas, tested by baristas, works amazingly. If you go to pacificfoodservice.com, you check out all of their different types of plant-based beverages. They have an extensive lineup, and they stand up to the heat from steaming, produce great texture, keep the balance focused on coffee in the cup, and guests love it. So check it out for yourself. If you want the best plant-based beverages for your guests, you better be trying the Barista Series from Pacific. I want to talk about something that is connected, but it's not exactly like operational.
Yeah.
A lot of people work with partners, they work with spouses, family, and sometimes there's a unique tension there. And as a couple, and you have a growing family, you've got a growing business. What's the secret? What's the lessons that you've learned, let's say, that help you with overcoming challenges of like communication or time management, energy management, and just like supporting the business and supporting each other, like how do people do this in a healthy way?
Great question.
That's a great question.
We're learning every day.
Yeah, for real.
We have to have open-handed grace for one another. We have almost always worked together.
Yeah.
So even when we were in college, we would do projects alongside one another. And when we were establishing our relationship in dating, we were just working alongside each other. We were collaborating. In our professional careers, we've always looped each other in some way.
Well, we sat on the same executive team as like staff members together. And then we did an incubator program with SCAD together. Yep. So in one breath, it's kind of just been our default. And then the other truly has been learning what that looks like for us. And I was talking to you today about it actually like, I personally find it very easy to work with your spouse. I find it very difficult to live with your coworker. And so kind of learning where those boundaries are. Because like I love my husband. I love that I get to work with you every day.
I love you too.
But I don't love at 9 p.m. we get an email and we're like, oh, did you see that we haven't paid our gas bill? And we're like, oh no. I think just kind of learning where those boundaries lie. And for us, it looks like when we go home, we try to drop work at the door. Yeah. We're not always perfect, but we try really hard to create that line, especially now that we have kids. And, you know, we want our daughter, Selah, not to grow up feeling like we take work home every single day. But yeah, we're still learning because every day there's a new challenge and it's hard not to take things personally sometimes too, because you're invested so much more than just a regular coworker would be. So yeah, so we don't know the answer to that, but when you find out, let us know because we're still figuring it out.
Yeah. It's a growth process for sure.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you've got some of it figured out, at least. I love the comment. It's easy to work with your spouse, but it's hard to work with or live with your coworker. It's a great phrase. And the boundary part, you know, is such a great conversation to have with even just people that you work with in the office, in the cafe, where a lot of people kill time in the one office together and you feels familial. You still need boundaries to know we're not just going to emotionally manipulate people into doing what we want them to do. We'll keep it professional. That probably is, it's good there. It's good in the relationship between the owners. So you talked about the character of people. You talked about the experience of the cafe, and these boundaries you set up are there specifically because you know that the health of the business relies on the health of the people who are kind of at the cornerstone of the business. You're the assets of the business. I mean, I would say the owners are the most important because obviously they're the ones that have the most power, leverage, decision-making capabilities. So you really have to be healthy, but you also have to set yourself up for success with systems and standards that, you know, as you grow, become harder and harder to navigate and wrangle with extraction times and is that window actually clean? And what about people showing up on time? There's a whole host of different systems and standards. How have you navigated the establishing and reestablishing of standards as you've grown?
It's really paying attention to the details. We call it owner vision whenever we walk in, and it's not going about micromanaging the team on details. It's when you see something, you learn to delegate it. And that's not to say that we don't get our hands dirty and scrubbing the floors when there's, you know, coffee grounds all over. It just happens. But it's from what we're experiencing as we're growing, we're learning to delegate more. We have team members that they're incredibly passionate about cleaning the windows or making sure the bar is maintained. We had one of our baristas yesterday. She was doing an incredible job just leading the entire team of deep cleaning and scrubbing down surfaces during downtime and everything else. And it's learning where people's skill sets are in those areas. We're able to delegate those tasks. And for us is kind of keeping a pulse on where everything is at and letting people know why those details matter. And in communicating that, we try to have a monthly all staff with all of our team in both locations, where we're able to meet with our managers first. We know what we're going to go over. We bring everyone together. We, you know, do something that's more communal, making sure people feel like they're a part of a team. And then we're doing something to edify them, to educate further for our bar teams and kitchen teams, and really help honing our skills and making sure that as people, we're good. And then as professionals, we're also excelling and growing and advancing together.
Yeah.
And for me, I am a fan of a good list. So if there's an expectation that I have, it will never go unspoken because it will be on some sort of list. So we have our opening list, we have our mid-shift list, we have our closing list. And so it's very clear of like what's expected. And I think that makes it a lot easier because I don't have to remind you to go clean that window because I know at the end of your shift that you're going to go and clean all the windows. There's a list for it. So I think that helps just set the expectation. So we're not having to try to figure out where the clarity is. The clarity is very clear on paper. And there is nothing in this job that we have asked people to do that we have not done ourselves
Correct.
1,000 times over. Especially when we first started, we were literally every position. We have been baristas. I have been in the kitchen for 2 years plus. I know exactly what it's like to go through that list. And is it reasonable? And is it, do we need to add more? Do we need to cut a little bit? So one, I think leading out of a sense of like never asking you to do something that we have not done.
Correct.
1,000 times.
And with that, training all those individuals on the standard operating procedures for everything, and working collaboratively with team members on advancing those SOPs, making sure that those are there, that our training is thorough enough, that they have enough time in their onboarding and training that they are able to feel confident in those things so that when our guests come through the front door, they're none the wiser. They think it's just a smooth operating organism. And really, there's a lot of work behind the scenes, right? We have a big, wide open white space when you walk into our cafe in Savannah, and that's a lot of upkeep. And so our team does an incredible job at that because they've been trained. There's a list, there's accountability, there are reminders on how to do it, and making sure that we're always communicating about that. Make sure it's at the forefront of what we do.
Yeah. And if something is maybe not being done the way that we'd hoped, we never see it as a failure on our staff.
No.
We always see it as there's clearly something in the process that we set up that isn't working. So again, like, does it need to be on a list? Do we need to, we also have people like initial the list so that, if our espresso machine isn't getting cleaned, we can make sure that we have adequate training. And so I think just knowing that, if things aren't being done the way we hoped, it's not a failure on our team. It's a failure of us either communicating or accountability. So
that's great. And I love that approach because that's exactly where you have the power to do something about it. And of course, you mentioned sometimes people aren't the right fit, but if you start with the decision making of where did we go wrong? Where did the system go wrong? Where, and you can kind of work from that position, eventually you may end up at the place where it's like, well, maybe this isn't the right hire, but a lot of times people just jump right to that and say, like, obviously you're the wrong fit, and never really grow as a business right? Because they're blaming the wrong thing. Right. So when you think about your cafe versus the pop-up, you've got regulars. You've got people coming back again and again and again, and they give you feedback. They give you, people at a wedding will give you feedback, but you might never see Uncle Joe again. You know?
Sure.
So, but now if he's coming into the cafe, he might leave a review. He might tell you how he thinks the coffee tastes. And in roasting, you're trying to figure out how's the raw product or how's the roasted product.
Yeah.
How is this keeping up? So I imagine there was somewhat of a quality inflection point when you started doing the brick and mortar cafe that allowed you to, get even better at what you were doing with coffee versus, just being a smaller operation.
Yeah, definitely. That's been a learning curve for us is to try to figure out, okay, what feedback are we supposed to really take in? And sometimes people will have unsolicited opinions, and it's hard to know what you should really take to heart. And so for us, we've kind of established if we have heard the same feedback 3 times, that's a red flag for us to say, okay, that's something that we really need to look into. Yeah. Because again, you're going to get, especially when you're dealing with hundreds of customers a day and people online, and we're also selling stuff via our website, like you're going to get a lot of feedback. So if it's feedback that is reoccurring, that's, the first sign for us that, okay, we need to really look into this because something's going on.
Yeah.
One comment may be, just one disgruntled person who's having a bad day, but 3 comments, that's something that we feel like we really need to look into. So that's kind of how we've approached feedback up to this point.
Yeah, that's right. And like earlier with the SOPs and lists for our team, it's keeping track of those and holding ourselves and our team accountable for that feedback that we're receiving. And 2, I think it's also listen to the feedback of your team, right? And the feedback from your staff members, because they're your number one guest coming in, your number one customer. They're hopefully consuming your product every day while they're there. That's their daily coffees when they're at the shop, probably. They're eating the food. They're hopefully enjoying the experience. They're bringing their friends and family when they're in town. At least that's been our experience. And so hearing the feedback from them, one of the biggest pieces of feedback is just on the job, the tensions that you feel. And like for us is wishing that we had more back of house storage than we ever realized we would ever need. We ended up doing that by taking over the unit behind us for our roastery and warehouse space eventually. But for the longest time, you have to listen to your team just as much as you listen to your customers or your guests that come in the front door. Your guests and customers, they're going to come in, they're going to experience a space, but they're going to experience the public side of it. Your team is going to know the front, back, in, out, everything. And so listening to their feedback and really honing things in there bleeds out to everything else.
Yeah. And I think just being aware of, as the owner, people won't be as honest with you as they may be with our staff. Yeah. Also just being aware that when you own a shop, people are going to tell you everything that you want to hear. But sometimes we like to go out and work in our cafe and just hear what people are saying. Because when they're unaware that you're there, they'll be very candid with their feedback. And it's a lot different than what they're going to tell you when, you're behind the bar and they're like, are you the owner? We love this place. They're not going to be like, hey, you didn't see my drink hot enough. They're not going to say that. So I think just being aware and also spending time out in your shop and just listening to what people have to say.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I was just thinking your approach to this is it's a difference of inflection where you could say what a lot of people say, what do they know? Or you could say, well, what do they know? There's a big difference. And so now you're in that later category, and it makes a big difference in how you change. Maybe the espresso, people are changing, is sour. Who knows? Something is happening. As you get better at your craft, you say, okay, well, now the coffee is being more thoroughly developed. I know you all just got a upgrade to a Mill City recently.
Yes.
Right. And that happened right alongside of this new location in Hilton Head, right? Almost around the same time. That's a lot of change. And I imagine you get to hear about the difference of the product and navigate whether, how is this expansion going from those people. They give you feedback on cappuccinos, but I'm sure they give you feedback on other things too. Like, hey, now you're really big and the coffee is changing a little bit. What have been some of the gleanings that you've had as you've made this last phase of expansion?
Yeah. Fun fact, our beautiful Mill City roaster is sitting unoperational only because anytime you do a build out, it's going to be way longer and more difficult than you think it's going to be.
And if you're lucky enough to be in a historic district of any city, it's going to be a lot of red tape to go through.
So we've actually had our Mill City since April. It's now December. And we are hopefully only weeks away from actually getting this thing turned on. Yeah. And that's just how it goes when you're doing your own build outs. And so,
but in the midst of it too, I mean, from the growth standpoint, there are things that have to change, right? And so for us, that comes from the sourcing side too. Tariffs, all the economic stuff that's been going on as of recent. Yeah. So for us, the growth and some of the changes that have been happening lately, even preemptively to the Mill City roaster being able to be turned on officially, is our sourcing. We used to just get it all from third-party importers. And we've had the incredible gift of meeting so many producers in person, several of which are regulars of our cafe in Savannah. They spend 6 months of the year here in Savannah and
Okay.
6 months of the year back in Brazil, Guatemala, and the other countries in which they're producing from. And it's been incredible to work with our guests that come in and experience our product. And I guess they like it enough that they want to be a part of it. And so working with them on, okay, what does it look like for us to do direct trade? And what's the quality of product we get in? How do we verify the quality coming in? We're not importers, right? We're learning on the job. And learning the tricks of the trade from our friends that have been doing it a lot longer, and having that sense of community that we're much stronger together than we are separate, and the community over competition perspective that we try to carry with every interaction. And so that's been interesting. And too, like as we've been adjusting and learning with our sourcing and our roasting program, our guests are noticing. They see it. They're like, hey, something's different with the espresso today. Like, oh yeah, we're using X coffee from this country, and we'll get feedback, and we're adjusting our profiles daily sometimes, depending on the feedback that we're getting, what we're noticing in that process. And so it's been really fun and dynamic to do that and be a part of something that is an ever evolving experience for people.
This last question I have for you really is, I think, an opportunity for people to get some advice from people who, with the confidence you have, with the position of listening and acting upon good feedback. I mean, you've got a lot of things going for you that really bring and breathe life to your business. And it's evident from what kind of growth has happened in the last 5 years. It's a different kind of growth that you could say, yeah, it's a lot of growth, but it's healthy growth. And, it's emotionally healthy. The energy is there. And so let me ask you both, what would you advise for coffee shop, cafe entrepreneurs that are looking to get a little bit of that confidence and make good decisions for their business community and people? What would you say are some of the things that make the biggest difference?
I would say don't wait until things are perfect to share your story. People love to see your growth wherever you're at. So even if you haven't started what you want to do yet, start your Instagram page, start telling people about what you're hoping to do, because you'll get people along the way that are rooting for you. And that made a big difference for Matt and I when we started.
Yeah.
So definitely don't wait to tell your story, just start telling it. And then I think the other one for me is just, I feel like something that's gone such a long way with us in our business is just being generous, and being generous, open-handed. So we try really hard to honor the people that work for us, and be generous with them, as well as our community and the people that come in and drink our coffee. And it has to be open-handed because 90% of what you do is going to go unseen, and that's not why you do it. But it goes a long way with people when they feel loved and cared for. Yeah. So I think just being very open-handed with generosity and tell your story and tell it from the get-go, and know that you'll learn things along the way. And that's the journey. That's what people are interested in.
Yeah. And to piggyback off of that, I think with the generosity, there's things that people will never know, but it's also doing things with the right intention. People can see right through it. So whether that is caring for your team, you're not doing it to increase longevity of their employment or their loyalty to your brand or anything like that. You're doing it because you care about them as an individual. The same with the guest that comes in. You're not treating them with hospitality or a sense of hospitality because you want them to spend more money there. You're treating them with hospitality. You are caring for them so much. I mean, the book, Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guardia, is an incredible North Star for this, is really like focusing on that individual, caring for what they're going through on a daily basis. I can't tell you the amount of stories that we have of people that come in and they're having the best day of their life. They literally just walked off the altar getting married and came into our cafe, full wedding gown, I kid you not. Or they're coming from the worst day at work and they're coming in just sobbing. And this is the only hope they have of the day of trying to pick it back up to a manageable place. And we have the opportunity to foster those moments. And so if you do that with intentionality, with care, with generosity, people see that, people will respond to that. And again, you're not doing it for anything in return. It's for caring for your neighbor. And at the end of the day, if you do that, it will come back. It may not be tomorrow, it may not be next week. You may not see it in your end of the year budget. But what you are going to see is you're going to feel more fulfilled. You're going to have more confidence in that. Your community is going to recognize that and come behind you in your coffee business, because coffee is a conduit for community at the end of the day. And it's something beautiful that we get to be a part of together. So that'd be my 2 cents.
And not that this is anything new, but I also think knowing your product, knowing what you're good at, and not trying to be everything for everybody. It's one mistake that I see a lot of new cafes is they open and they have a big long menu and they want to have all the smoothies and they want to do bowls, and like I think sometimes it can get away from people a little bit and feel a little overwhelming. So if you keep your menu small and just focus on what you're really good at and make sure that that experience and that excellence stays there even when you grow, I think is really important. So
well said. Yeah, great advice, y'all. Wonderful. And I've really enjoyed hearing some stories about your development and your journey. I think this has been really encouraging. So all the power to you, you know, as you keep on growing. And tell us where we can learn more about Origin Coffee Bar, just online and on the socials.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Chris, for having us on Keys to the Shop. This is a dream come true for us.
Yeah.
And if anyone wants to follow up with our story or our cafe in Savannah or Hilton Head, you can find us at origincoffee.bar. That's our Instagram social handle for everything, as well as our website, or origincoffeebar.com if that's more comfortable. But you can find us on there. We're sharing our story. We're sharing about our team and our community every day. So we'd love to meet y'all as well. If you're ever in town, please say hey.
Awesome. Well, Matt, Elise, thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Well, I hope that you enjoyed that episode with Matt and Elise Higgins. A huge thank you to both of you, Matt and Elise. It was so great to have you on the show for this Founder Friday to cap off our Founder Friday series for 2026 with such a great interview with people doing this kind of work. Really appreciate the intentionality that they bring to coffee. And it makes me really happy to know that they're continuing to grow and it resonates so well with their community. So you can check out more information about Origin Coffee Bar by going to their website. First of all, origincoffee.bar. And then if you are interested in following along with them on Instagram and what they're doing, go ahead and go to origincoffee.bar on Instagram as well, at origincoffee.bar. Now, if you have any questions for me, you can just email chris@keystotheshop.com and I'd be happy to answer them. So that's also where I tell people you should go to ask me about the key holder coaching groups that we have. These are cohorts of experienced coffee shop owners, 2+ years of brick and mortar coffee shop experience is kind of like the requirement. But I interview a lot of people who apply throughout the year to put together these groups. We run the cohort for 6 months, twice a year. And right now we've got our fall cohort going. It's been so cool. A lot of breakthroughs. And every time we do this, it's been almost 3 years now since we've been running these. Every time it's unique, it's powerful, it's effective, and it's something that you might want to think about for 2026. In March, we're going to be starting another cohort. So if you're interested in joining a group of about 6 to 7 different cafe owners and operators who are interested in helping one another in community, this is what key holder coaching groups are all about. If you go to the website, keystotheshop.com, there is a page for coaching groups. You can learn more right there. You could actually apply today if you want for these future groups. That'd be an option because we've got the application still open right now. It's always open on the website. So if you want early consideration for membership, you can put in your application there and you and I will have a conversation after that happens. So go to the keystotheshop.com on coaching groups and then we'll go from there. All right. So as usual, I am so grateful that you joined me today. Thank you for listening. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.